Hi, I will be sharing a gorgeous, full of texture, wintry watercolor scene with you. Stay tuned. Welcome back everyone, I am Erum this theme and I will be doing some watercoloring today. My card features the Mini Delight Polar Bear stamp set. And I have created a winter scene for this little fellow, watercolored a beautiful night sky and these odd looking trees. So this is the stamp and die and cute sentiments on this one. I have my Crest Solar White out. This is a full die as you can see, so this means my stamping goes on later, I suppose. I'm not good with animals on paper. In real life, I'm awesome with them. I love animals. I rescue cats all the time and they love me back. But animals on paper is a whole new world. So I got too busy while I struggled with the stamping of eyes and etc. etc. But it's done, and thankfully. You can't see, but this bear has indentations of legs, mouth, and also his tummy. It's very nice. It's quite detailed. I have my artist watercolor out. I'll apply water to the area where I want to add my night sky. This is a very easy watercolor scene, guys. Then I'll start by dropping in cool summer night pigment and spread it around. I'll try to keep the concentration darker in the center and lighter on the edges. That is the plan. It could change. I laugh at myself when I say these things because I'm sure you'd say that, but you already know what will happen. I know what will happen. But I pick these lines or what I've said while I'm actually crafting. As I mentioned in my previous videos that I talk, I kind of almost do my voiceovers when I'm crafting. So I use that same bit of speech in this voiceover as well. It keeps it more original and more me, showing you what an unplanned crafter I am. So to make my blue a bit darker, I will add a bit of rock collection pigment to it and then add splatters of this onto the wet watercolor. You will notice that I make sure not to get those dark splatters on the edges, but on the center only. If you want, you can use a tissue to lighten the outer area of the watercolor to create a softer diffuse look. And if you don't like the softer diffuse look and just want that harsh solid background, that is fine too. This is your background, your party, your card. Do whatever you want to do. I will then use the heat tool to dry this panel a bit. Next, I'll add splatters of the leftover color. Make sure to mask off the ground. Here I'm using just a scrap piece of paper that was lying around. I will also add different blues for variation to add as splatters. I'll dry this thoroughly. Then I'll add splatters of clean water. Leave it on for a few seconds and then sop them up. I'll do this a couple of times. Next, from a ground, I'll use a very, very, very diluted pigment of rock collection. Then dry this. Then with a dry brush, I will add texture to the background. Dry the panel again thoroughly. Then I'll take the brush tip from the fine liner set and scribble my trees. I won't try to perfect them with the pen. Instead, I'll use the rock collection pigment and soften the scribble lines. In this way, we will get two tones of black, the hard lines from the brush pen and the softer strokes from the watercolor. I will also add shadows to the ground. I would have liked a moon there too, a tiny one, but I knew I'd mess it up without a proper masking paper, which I do not have. Before adhering the polar bear, I added shadow to the ground where he would stand. I did this with a dry brush again, just to have it not as a blob of gray paint, but just as texture. And add my snow, also known as white chalk paint. While my panel is drying, I added a bit of inking onto the polar bear using the mini ink blending tool and vanilla cream dye ink. I mount the panel onto pale grey cardstock which I have adhered to my white card base. Then I'll adhere my polar bear on foam tape and I'm done. With my card now complete, I wanted to show you how this panel would look if I would use other watercolor mediums in case you don't have the artist watercolors. First, I'll try the Woodless watercolor pencils. I'll apply pigment of turquoise onto A2 watercolor cardstock and activate the pigment with wet paintbrush. Then I'll spray a little water as well for that a flowy feel. Now I'll dry this panel. The reason I dried the panel is so that I can add other pigment over it, and the other pigment that I will add is now Desert Night. And I'll apply this directly over the panel just like I applied turquoise. And I'll also add a little bit of black, but very little because it is very pigmented. I'll spritz the water on this and then I'll dab my brush so that the pigment moves around. I'll also use a tissue to soften the watercolor edges. Now to replicate the panel, I'll start adding splatters of Desert Night Woodless watercolor pigment, and I'll also add splatters of black pigment from the Woodless watercolor pencil. After this, I will add a very diluted pigment of black watercolor to the snow just as I did in the first panel. I'll repeat the same process again more or less. For the trees, I'll use the Woodless watercolor pencil directly, and then I'll use the fine liner brush tip to add details. Then I'll use a wet paintbrush to spread the pigment. Then I'll add shadows, dry the panel, and to finish, I will add white splatters from the chalk paint. It's exactly a repeat of the steps that I did the first time. Now I'd like to compare the two panels side by side, and the result is quite similar. It's a little different, but not a lot of difference between the two panels. So if you don't have one of the other mediums, you can definitely use the one that you do have to achieve the same look, more or less. The three shades that I use in the Woodless watercolor pencils are turquoise, desert night, and black. For my third panel, I'll use watercolor brush markers to create the same panel, and there are two ways that you can do this. One is the direct to paper method that I'll be doing, and the other one is to apply it on watercolor palette, pick it from there. In the latter, it will be significantly lighter, more diluted, and you'll be able to control the concentration a lot better. The way I am applying the pigment, it's going to be super pigmented unless you add a lot of water to it. But I love the result this gives. Again, the two colors that I will be using are Desert Night and Turquoise. No black this time. I will not be needing it because the watercolor brush markers are really pigmented and the Desert Night is super pigmented. I'll add splatters of clean water as these colors are super reactive to water, and I'll be able to pick up quite a lot of color back with the tissue paper. I'll also add darker splatters, repeating the same steps as previous panels. And then work on my ground. In the same manner, I will use black, a very diluted concentration of black watercolor onto the ground. And then my trees in the same manner. I won't change any steps, but the only difference here is the chalk paint will turn blue as I add it, and it won't stay white. so I won't have white snow, you guys. But I love the result of the watercolor brush markers the best, as they give a super pigmented, vibrant result, but they all look good in their own unique way. The brush marker panel could depict a night sky, whereas the others could depict an evening sky. Which panel do you prefer the most? I hope this video was helpful to you. I will share a link to Amber's video as well in the description. She also covered this topic previously and it was done very well. Thank you for watching, everyone. Have a lovely week. Bye.
Hello there! Did that video just spark your creativity? And do you want more project ideas and inspiration videos too? Well, if you do, please make sure that you subscribe to the Altenew YouTube channel. Also, make sure that you do click that notification bell so you don't miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye!